May begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to an election forum on the Seattle School Levy upcoming. You will be voting on two levies, an operations levy and a capital levy. The date of the election is February 8th, but your ballots will be in the mail this week, January 19th. They will be starting to mail those out. So we're very happy to bring you this program to help you look at what you'll be deciding. I'm Laura Weese. I'm the co-chair of the Election Forums Committee at Horizon House. My co-chair, Sam Sperry, is here and will be helping out, as well as two other Horizon House residents, Jenny Stimpson and Adele Reynolds. The program is co-sponsored by the First Hill unit of the League of Women Voters, and we will hopefully have representatives from the League watching as well. The schedule, Jenny's going to put up the time schedule for the afternoon's program. All right, so we're going to be hearing from three speakers from the Seattle School District, and then from a pro speaker, and we'll hear a con argument. I just realized there's a spelling, Sam Sperry, but then sorry, I didn't catch that. Then we have a Q&A period from 3:30 to 4. And I wanted to urge those of you that are on the Zoom webinar to think about your questions, put them on the chat as they come to mind, or jot them down, because we want to preference those of you that are live here for the Zoom with bringing up questions for us. So thanks very much. And let me, I think that's all I need to say by way of introduction, and I'm ready to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Jolene Bergey, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Finance for the Seattle School District. And she will be followed by Becky Asensio, Capital Projects Planning Manager, and Carlos Del Valle, Executive Director, Department of Technology. Jolene, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. Can everyone see that? Thumbs up, yep, all right. So on the agenda today, school district staff will be able to provide information. We can't advocate for the levies. We're here to provide information though about the levies and answer questions. So we are planning for two school levies that are on the ballot February 8th. We'll talk a little bit about school funding, and then we'll go over the two levies and what they would pay for if passed. Those two levies are the Educational Programs and Operations Levy. We often refer to this as the Operations Levy or the EP&O Levy. And then the BTA 5 Capital Levy includes the technology portion. It's building, technology, academics, and athletics. And we'll go over that more in just a moment. So K-12 funding in Seattle School District and in other districts across the state. School districts are funded through state, local, and federal dollars, but every 3 or 4 years, school districts are all on a normal cycle. School districts ask voters to consider renewing levies, including the operations levy. And these are local education property tax levies. The local levies, including the capital levy, the BTA levy, that is the main source of funding for technology and for school building construction, maintenance, and improvements. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But that's why school districts ask for levies. All the money that's generated by these levies stay in the Seattle Public Schools. They all go to Seattle Public Schools to support our students. And these are different than the city's family education levy. That's a separate levy. This is the Seattle Public Schools levies. So a diagram to kind of show a picture view of how our general fund, and the general fund is where the operations levy goes. So this chart does not reflect proceeds from levies for the capital fund. It's just the operations levy. But the state provides about 60% of our revenue each year. And then the next largest funding source is our local taxes or the operations EP&O levy at 15%. So property taxes have to be approved by voters. We do have levies on the ballot every 3 years. These are renewals of levies that have been ongoing for many decades. One does support critical day-to-day operations, the operations levy, and then the capital levy is supporting technology and the school building improvements and maintenance. Those levies do address critical funding that we'll provide some examples for in just a moment. So a little bit about how our taxes compare to other districts around us. So this chart shows the levy rates per 1,000 of assessed valuation. So when you got a tax bill last October, this was the rate that was reflected on that tax bill. In total, we have 3 levies that are passed. We have the EP&O levy, and then we have 2 capital levies that alternate, and both of those are also included in this $1.84 rate. So in the $1.84 rate is the operations levy that expires at the end of 2022. There was the BEX or the Building Excellence levy that was passed in 2019 and continues for 6 years. And then the other one is the BTA levy, which we're talking about today. That levy is also for 6 years and expires at the end of 2022. So for all 3 of those levies, it was a total of $1.84 per 1,000. And you can see other districts around us, because of our high value commercial and business property in the Seattle downtown core, we do enjoy one of the lowest rates per 1,000. Highline, which represents the community of Burien, has they have approved their levies at a rate of $4.50 per 1,000. So now I'll speak a little bit about the EP&O levy. And again, this is something that we renew every 3 years to make sure that our students have access to tools and resources that they need to succeed. So some examples of what the operations levy provides for our child nutrition programs. We run somewhere generally between a $2 and a $4 million deficit in these programs, where the funding from the federal government and the money that we charge per lunch doesn't cover all of our costs. So levy does provide somewhere between $2 and $4 million each year. The levy also provides support for social emotional programs, our special education program, additional staff like mental health counselors. It helps support STEM programs, career and technical education or CTE programs. And the operations levy helps with student athletic, music, and other extracurricular activities. And I'm going to give you some specific examples because you may have heard that that McCleary, the lawsuit, has fully funded basic education. McCleary did adjust teacher salaries, but McCleary did not provide enough staffing units to our district. There's still some gaps. And again, levies fill those gaps. So one of those is nurses. Right now, the state, under full funding of McCleary, provides 9 nurses to our school district. And that's for our 50,000 students. And we pay for 68 nurses for our 105 schools. So we actually need to increase that. And we've been increasing the number of nurses each year. But there's quite a difference between what the state's providing funding for through what's called the prototypical funding model, which is the funding model for K-12, and what we're actually having to hire for in our district. Another example is custodians. Right now, the state funds 219 custodians. We do have 105 schools, 3,200 classrooms, and we employ 408 custodians. So again, this is where the levy is buying up how many staff we have to operate our buildings. Our special education program is probably the program that receives the most support from the levy. Right now, out of the $180 million current budget, the state is estimated to provide about $82 million, leaving $98 million in levy to fill that hole. So I'll summarize the EP&O financials. So the EP&O levies are based on how many students we have and legislative formulas. So the legislature currently says that we can collect $3,000 per student. And so this levy, if passed, would raise $646.8 million over 3 years. And that is a rate of 73 cents per thousand. So that would replace the component of the $1.84 that we spoke of before. This would replace that. Now, we do ask for additional capacity of 11 cents because we may increase our enrollment. So if we increase our enrollment, we want to go ahead and be able to collect the $3,000 for each student that we would gain in our enrollment counts. Or if there are small legislative changes made to inflationary factors. So we ask the voters to approve and give us the authority to collect up to 73 cents per thousand. Right now, according to law and our enrollment, we would only be collecting 63 cents, would be currently eligible for collections. So we ask voters for some additional capacity, as we have and as other districts commonly do as well, but we only collect what our actual enrollment and state law allows. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becky for BTA.
Thank you, Jolene. I'm Becky Asensio. I'm the planning manager in the capital projects group at the school district. And I'll give you an overview of the buildings, technology, and academics, athletics capital levy. Can I get the next slide? So Jolene mentioned this. This is a 6-year levy. This will replace the expiring BTA 4 levy, which will expire in 2022. BTA levies are our smaller of our 2 levies. The building excellence levies, which we are in the middle of BEX 5, are the levies that do the large building replacements and constructions. The BTA levy does small renovations, major maintenance projects on our buildings, and improvement projects on our buildings. The BTAs also include technology funding and funding for academics and athletics. Next slide. So we frequently get asked how we come up with our list for the levies that we propose to the school board. For the BTA levies, we use a third-party consultant. They go through all of our school buildings and assess every single system in the building, from the windows and doors to the plumbing and the electrical systems. And they provide us a score that we use to prioritize where the most need is in the district. And then we follow school board policies and principles, guiding principles that are provided to us. And then we review that with some oversight committees. Next slide. One of the projects on this levy that we are getting a lot of questions about is the replacement of Memorial Stadium. If you're not familiar with it, this is the stadium that's located next to Seattle Center. It's a school district stadium. It's been there since 1947, I believe. And it's time to replace the stands. We'd like to replace the 2 grandstands and bring them up to today's codes for seismic and everything else. As part of the levy, we would do our normal maintenance on the synthetic turf field. And then we put in some new energy efficient lighting. Next. So the next few slides are just going to give you an idea of that when I say building system improvements, what we're talking about in the levy. And these are spread across the whole district. So each school will have different types of projects, but these are the types of projects that are in the levy. We have projects for sites and playgrounds. And when I say sites, we're talking about repairing asphalt, so parking lots, hard play areas like where basketball and foursquare is, stormwater repairs, and then playground improvements and replacements. Can I get the next slide? We also have programs to replace exterior windows and doors. That improves safety. It improves the energy use in the building when we put in energy efficient windows. This is also where we replace roofs in the district, and then how we maintain the masonry. And we have quite a few buildings that are 80, 90, 100, over 100 years old. So we need to maintain that masonry. A lot of them are masonry schools. So we have regular funding in our levies to do that. Next slide. We also have projects for safety and security. This includes things like seismic projects to improve earthquake safety at schools, systems to replace fire alarm systems, fire sprinkler systems, and improvements to security throughout the district. Other types of projects that we have include improvements to HVAC or your ventilation systems. I'm sure everybody's heard a lot about that in the last 2 years. Improvements to plumbing. Sometimes it's putting in the water bottle fillers at our schools. Not all of them have them yet. And then improvements where our consultant identifies the needs for electrical lighting systems, plumbing systems, and then intercom systems. Other project types that we have, secure entry vestibules. We started a program in the BEX 5 levy to install secure entry areas at all our schools or at our schools. And we're continuing that in the BTA 5. So if a school doesn't have an entryway where there's a secure entry that controls who can enter the building, that's what this funding is for. And then we also have put in funding to improve accessibility in our schools, for gender neutral restrooms, for clean energy projects, and for improvements at our central kitchen. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Carlos, who's going to talk about the technology portion of the levy.
Hi. Let me start by saying that, like Jolene was noting earlier, that 85% of technology costs is funded by the capital levy funds. To put it in perspective, about 127 full-time employees in DOTS that support about 60,000 users. Of those, the state only pays for 3. 124 are paid by these levies. In essence, this levy is a proper allocation of funds for effective implementation of technology and the maintenance across the districts, providing for high quality education. It includes staffing, equipment, networks, software, resources, licenses, just to name a few, and I'll go in detail here. Next slides. Slide, please. This levy ask aligns with the board guiding principles that ensures students and educators and staff have the resources they need for high quality education here in Seattle. In addition, these asks were reviewed by the Information Technology Advisory Committee, ITAC, who provided vital recommendations on what is important to the community. Their feedback was incorporated into the analysis of these projects as far as technology. We found 3 major areas that are very critical to us: the student learning and support, the district systems and data, and the infrastructure and security. Within the student learning and support, this funding is to pay for technical support staff who provides repairs and logistics of equipment at the schools. Also pays for digital learning support, the purchasing of instructional software licenses, buying the student laptops and tablets, and all the associated staff that provides for this area. In the districts and systems and data, this funding covers for software systems, developers and analysts, the feed and care of our business financial systems, our learning management systems like Schoology and Seaside, and the student information systems, including Power Schools, very important tools for the educators and the students. Also, it includes hardware and software applications licenses, some cloud services that we have, and the consultants and vendors that provides support for this area and associated staff. And finally, the infrastructure and security. It provides for funding and operating costs of running the data center, the backbone infrastructure, that means the networks, the fiber, cyber security monitoring systems, how we keep the kids safe, security cameras, the schools, cloud management services, licenses, operating equipment. We also pay out of here for internet connectivity that became very important for families that could not afford it, at the start of the pandemic. The telephone service, utility bills paid out of here, and all the associated stuff that provides for this area. Basically, these funds cover for how we keep the lights on for technology here in Seattle. Slide, please. As we're aware, the pandemic accelerated our deployment of computers to a one-to-one device for devices, tablets, laptops, and we added the extra hotspots, access points for internet for those who needed it. We nearly doubled the number of devices that needed to be managed and their maintenance. And this increase in devices required an increase in support of the infrastructure, such as the wireless points. We increased the fiber pipe, so we have more bandwidth within it. We increased our language support on the main website. We increased the routers and the networks. We leveraged some cloud services solutions, and we improved the cybersecurity as well for our kids in the entire network. This included also an increase on personnel and our technical support to keep up with all the trouble tickets for the increase on those devices. In essence, we are looking to provide for racial equitable tools in the student learning and support, the annual maintenance and support of the current technology infrastructure, how we keep the lights running, right, for technology. The data privacy, how we keep the kids safe, and the user experience. How do we take all this technology we have bought over the past 2 years and we increase towards academic goals, and also finally the refreshment of computers and tablets on a regular schedule, which is a four-year cycle, but also the infrastructure that also needs refreshment, which is in a more 6-year cycle. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Becky for the athletics and academics funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. So the last section of funding in the BTA levy is called academics and athletics. Most of the funding in this, there's some for some small academic programs, but most of it is around the athletics. We have funding in here to replace synthetic turf fields. Those fields need to be replaced about every 10 years as regular maintenance as they wear out. So we fund that with the levies, with the capital levies. And we also have funding in here for some improving some field lights, installing energy efficient lighting, and for athletic equipment. So there's some large equipment that schools cannot afford to replace on their own. So we fund that with capital funding. And then we also have funding in there for large arts equipment replacement. If you think of a kiln in an elementary, perhaps, or the lighting structure and the large curtains in a performing arts center. It's that type of the large purchases that would be in this levy. And then the same for science equipment. If you think of like the vent hoods that you need in the chemistry lab. Next slide. So for the BTA 5 capital levy, the levy request is $783 million. It is over 6 years. And this would address what the consultants identified as priority 1 projects. The rate per thousand for this levy would be 47 cents. This is an increase over the BTA 4 starting levy amount, which was 43 cents. And most of that is driven by the additional need for technology, as Carlos described just a minute ago. And I think that's the end of our presentation. So I'm handing it back to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We're moving faster than I had thought, so I guess that's good. Thank you very much. We are next going to ask Melissa Palethorpe to speak for on the pro side of the levy. She's with Schools First, the campaign to pass the levy. Melissa, great to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. As Laura mentioned, I am the volunteer president of Schools First. We're a small group of citizens who come together and lead the citizen-led campaign to get out the yes vote in favor of Seattle Public Schools levies every 3 years. I think you heard a lot about the information and work that go into the levies. The district is not able to campaign on its own behalf. As a lifelong resident of Seattle, a product of Seattle Public Schools, and with 3 kids, 1 still in Seattle Public Schools, of course, I feel passionately about public education and our success for our students in our city. So have done this a number of times. I just want to say we can use all the help that we can get. Well, Seattle voters tend to be very generous about supporting our levies and supporting education in the city. Apathy and not getting that ballot in could have a big impact. So I would really like to encourage everybody to get the vote out, particularly for to encourage people who don't have kids in schools, because sometimes, especially on a February ballot, it can go unnoticed. So encourage that. If you want to know more about how to get involved and or want to advocate for the levies, please see our website is www.schoolsforseattle.org. There's lots of talking points there, ways you can get yard signs if you have that opportunity to show those, join text banking events and or sign waving events if you want to get out. So hope that many of you would please be active in supporting our levies. It's obviously really important that we replace these. There's so many fundamental aspects to what they support and fund. And as several folks have said, right now is an absolute critical time to support our students. It's been a long, hard couple of years, and some of these supports will be super, super important coming out of the pandemic successfully. So just encourage that, and please watch for your ballot in the mail. You don't even have to put a stamp on it anymore. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. Sam Sperry is going to present the con arguments. Sam?
Yes, thank you, Laura. I will be reading 2 statements in opposition that were submitted by 2 citizens and appeared on the King County Elections website. We invited both of these gentlemen, Mr. Jeff Heckathorn and Chris Jackins, to appear. We did not get a response from Mr. Heckathorn, and Mr. Jackins indicated an interest in appearing or in finding a substitute, but that was not successful. So in order that at least a summary of their views be presented, I'll read them now. And this is a statement in opposition to Proposition 1. In 2018, the McCleary decision was promised to be a levy swap. Instead, state school property taxes increased dramatically, and local school taxes never went away and are again spiraling out of control. For 2020-2021, for the district's administrators, the median total compensation was $184,543, with a high of $368,686. Median teacher compensation is at $120,858, up 19% in the last 3 years, multiple times inflation. The argument that this levy is for certain few duty types is disingenuous and heartless at best. The district complains that this levy fills the gap left from state legislators. The legislators are correct in saying no to the district. Local voters should do the same. Nearly all districts try just to focus on how our property tax rates will remain nearly flat, as if that has or will do any of us any favors. A flat tax rate multiplied by skyrocketing assessed property values equals skyrocketing taxes in dollars, parenthesis, paid for by property owners and renters in their rents, close parenthesis. Please provide your input and vote. There are more details at www.schooldataproject.com. Submitted by Jeff Heckathorn, info@schooldataproject.com. Now for the statement in opposition to Proposition 2. A no vote is a vote to save Memorial Stadium, a living tribute to World War II veterans. This capital levy would demolish Memorial Stadium, and this levy is a gigantic 64% increase from the 2016 levy. Parenthesis, 783 million versus 475.3 million, close parenthesis. Please vote no on Proposition 2. A no vote is a vote to save historic Rainier Beach High School, pardon me. This levy adds to demolition plans for Rainier Beach, which was supposed to be saved and modernized like Garfield, Cleveland, Roosevelt, Franklin, and West Seattle. The district's 2014 Meng report notes Rainier Beach has been, quote, extremely well maintained, close quote. A no vote is a vote for instruction by teachers, not machines. Parenthesis, technology, 270 million, close parenthesis. Remember when teachers used to recommend that students watch less TV? This levy does the opposite. It worships screen time. Instead, students need physical books and human teachers. A no vote is a green vote. This levy will cut down trees, parenthesis, remember the clear cut of Ingram's trees, close parenthesis, shrink playground space, parenthesis, remember the shrunken playgrounds at Loyal Heights, Thornton Creek, Northgate, close parenthesis, and replace natural grass with plastic grass, parenthesis, Jane Addams' last natural grass field would go, close parenthesis. Submitted by Chris Jackins, Post Office Box 84063, Seattle 98124.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Let's see. Yeah, we in our chat, I see Melissa Westbrook is here, and you volunteered, Melissa, to say a few words. Am I muted? No. Can you hear me? I don't know what's happening.
We can hear you, Laura.
Oh, you can. Okay. So Melissa didn't respond. All right. Well, Liddell can do some quick looking on the chat, but it looks like all the questions that I saw came from Melissa. So if she comes in, then we can ask her. Meanwhile, Jenny, would you put up the question one of the ones that we had prepared? Okay, I think some of this was answered, but if it's something worth asking again, how were the projects selected for the BTA levy? Who decides? And are these projects and funds transferable among categories within the scope of the levy? And I don't know what happened to the end of it. Is there a provision for emergencies, right? Okay, would one of you like to answer that? Becky, perhaps, or Jolene, whoever, Carlos?
Becky will.
Yeah, so for the BTA levy, actually for all of our levies, we use consultants to go assess our schools. So this is a team of architects and engineers. They follow the OSPI, which is the state superintendent of public instruction, has certifications for these inspectors. So we have certified inspectors visit all of our buildings, and they assess the condition of every system in there. So they'll be in there for several days going through, making notes, and they assign a score of 1 to 5, and 5 being the worst condition, 1 being the best condition. And that's done for every single system. So we have a report from them that's, around 700-800 pages long that gives us the details on everything in the building and the condition of it. We take that information and we look for the worst condition items, of course, and then we go and consult with our facility operations department, and we meet multiple times with them in detail, and we'll meet with their experts on, for plumbing and carpentry, their roofers, the people that repair and replace windows, the fire alarm people. And we'll go through all that data that we receive from the consultant with the facilities people who are out in our buildings every day and know the buildings very well. Take all that information and build a prioritized list. We use a consultant to develop cost estimates for that work. And then our ultimate goal is to try and be about the same levy rate as previously. So we try to work towards whatever that dollar amount is. And we come up with a list and we continue to refine and narrow it down. And ultimately, we present that to the school board, who is the one that decides what goes on the levy. And I don't remember the rest. Can we switch between categories? Not really. It is all capital funding, but ultimately what we say we're going to do in the levy is what we will do. So if we say we're going to have a project to replace the synthetic turf field at a specific school, we will do that. And as far as emergencies in the district, I'm not really sure, Jolene, on if there's a separate fund that's kept for emergency work.
There
And
is.
Becky, those projects are still put out to competitive bid and like that.
Yes,
So there's
yes,
still
yeah.
a lot of discretion involved in the actual
Oh,
cost.
yes.
So I'll just add that, a promise made is a promise kept is how we think about it at the district. We put out we have a list of discrete projects on the website by dollar amount. Those dollar amounts are of course estimates, but the project is a commitment that we feel like we've made to the community. So that is followed. And then we have contingency dollars built in any sort of responsible planning. You always have contingency, and that happens in our capital project asks as well. So I think that would answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Adele, are you seeing any questions from anyone other than Melissa Westbrook? She's left a message that she can't seem to get on audio. So
okay, I can read the questions. I don't see others. First is.
Can you hear me now?
oh yeah, here you are.
Go ahead, Melissa.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected for a minute. Yes, my name is Melissa Westbrook. I've written the Seattle Schools Community Forum blog for more than a decade. I will say that I support the operations levy. I always do. But the BTA 5 levy has quite a few issues, and I actually put my questions up at the district's Facebook page yesterday, and they have not answered them. And you have to wonder why they would not answer direct questions. Just to be clear about, when the district was showing you the pennies on the dollar rate, the thing to know just bluntly is this levy is going from $475 million last time to $765 million this time, which is an increase of $300 million. The other thing to note is that, for example, they want to spend $1 million on a new batting cage in West Seattle, which seems problematic. They want to, on the issue of technology, 85% of the technology budget comes from these BEX and BTA levies. I know of no other school district anywhere that would base an entire important department on levies. So if any of these levies ever fell, the technology department is going to have a very hard time operating, and the district will have to tear into other departments to pay for technology, because in today's world, the technology is the basis of how many things get done. I'm a little confused that Lincoln High is getting $5 million for fields when I'm not even sure that they have fields. There's also a very odd item. It says funding for retro commissioning facilities operation personnel for 6 years. Is that giving raises to all these people over 6 years? That is a very basic question that I think that they should answer. A Memorial Stadium, I just want to make it clear to people, the district owns 9 acres of the most valuable land in Seattle in Memorial Stadium. The city is very excited about seeing this revamped, but the city is going to gain benefit from whatever is done to Memorial Stadium. And I'm just wondering if the city is going to contribute to making Memorial Stadium more improved, because there's a lot that could be done there. And yet they're excited about it, but the city has not offered to do anything. And that's generally what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Would any of the speakers like to respond to what Melissa has said? Jolene?
I'm going to let Melissa Palethorpe go first, and then I can respond to some of the more technical questions.
Okay, Melissa.
So as another Melissa, concerned with, of course, what we pay for in our city and like that. One of the reasons I'm involved with Schools First is overall, the district manages these capital projects on budget, on time, over time. There may be differences between what originally was thought and what happens in the end, but I think that maintaining the commitment to the community. For example, Rainier Beach High School was put on the list the last time around after a lot of citizen input, after a new equity lens was applied and like that. So the objections to what's happening there, I think, should also be weighed against what the community has said about that space. I think that's, again, as Becky said, there's a whole lot of process that goes into these levies and what's shaped, and ultimately the school board actually approves the list. So I feel like there's a lot of checks and balances on it. And then again, the projects are competitively. So we can all choose a project and focus on that and ask questions about that. But I think at the end of the day, the levies are super important to keeping our buildings safe, secure, modern for our kids. On technology, we've had enormous demands put on schools that were not foreseen. Some of that is reflected in this. And then I would add that our levy rates stay essentially the same. And I think it's also really important to make the distinction, and Jolene, you might want to speak to this, about what we ask authorization for and what we're able to collect, because those are two different things based on some of what came out of McCleary. So I would just invite, because I think there are people on this call with a whole lot more factual information than I have about some of these specifics, to also please share your information, because I think it's really important to hear. Thanks.
Melissa. Becky, do you have a list? Can you provide the link that shows each project with the cost estimate? Do we have that where you can post the PDF or the link to that, or get back to them on that?
I'll get that. I don't think we've posted the dollar amounts. We posted every single project on the levy webpage so that you could search by school. So if you were interested in a specific school, you can go search by that. But we didn't put the dollar amounts on there. So I can get that and we will send that over.
Okay. I'd just say that we do have a joint use agreement with the city. So there's some charging of fees back and forth as we use each other's facilities. But Memorial Stadium, we do use ourselves. And the grandstands are past the end of life. And we need to address that facility just like we would any of our other facilities. So making sure that those are kept up. The BT levy is very similar to your own house maintenance and how you would think about that. That's how we go about that. The technology department, actually, most other districts run a straight tech levy. They don't run it into they don't run it jointly with their capital levy. But if you look at other districts, every other district funds their technology department the same way that we are, but it's typically called a separate technology levy that they do run because the state funding hasn't caught up. The formulas are still 40 years old before there were really IT departments, and they haven't adjusted that component of the formula similar to the nurse allocation. So I will stop there and see if my colleagues have anything they would like to add.
Well, I see Adele, I see Joanna Cullen, the chair of the League Education Committee, has a question on the chat. And this, I think, is what we've been talking about right now. But Joanna, can you come on and ask your question if you still would like to do that? Joanna.
Okay, well, that's my question. They just answered, they just said that they would send the PDF over, and I searched for that several times, and I do not want to have to go to every single school. And I mean, I don't know why they didn't just put the cost with each project, and that's my question. And they can't answer it until they send the PDF. So.
Okay, so your question is answered, and there will be a list that we could see.
Yeah, can I just explain that the costs were all shown in work sessions that we had with the board. Throughout the planning process, we had regular work sessions with the board. And the final list went to the board, and that's where the costs were listed. I just need to pull it out of the document where we request the formal board approval and send that to you. It's buried inside another document that's on our website.
So my other question then is, why aren't your work sessions continue to be something that I can access? Because I went to that work session and I had to have this SPS ID to look at it. And I have some of the same complaints about committee and committee meetings. I think they should all be streamable, and they should be on, you should be able to access a video on all of those. And that's been an issue for me for years, even before the pandemic. The committee sessions were never streamed.
Okay, I can pass on that comment.
I think they all are now, Joanna. That's one of the good things with pandemic is
Right.
that our meetings are streamed. Are you saying you can't find them on the website? Is that it?
Well, after they're streamed, they're not always available to watch later. Even though they are obviously being streamed, and there should be no problem with allowing the public to see them, including the work sessions. I don't know why that's behind an SPS wall.
Hi there, this is Melissa Westbrook. I can just say that I believe audio is available for work sessions and for committee meetings. The big problem with the committee meetings is you can only look at the agenda. You have to write, as I do, to the board office and ask permission for them to send the documentation about what they're talking about. Otherwise, you'll have an agenda that says near nothing and you will have no idea what's going on. That's what should change. All the documentation should be attached to every single meeting that they have. So that.
Anyway, and there's no reason, I will look for the audios, but the audios aren't very helpful if you don't have the materials. So anyway.
Thank you, Joanna. We'll communicate that back to our board office and to our board.
There were a couple questions that have come up through this discussion that I was hoping to answer, if that's okay. In the written statements that Mr. Sperry read, that there was a comment about Memorial Stadium. And I just wanted to point out what is in our project is just replacing the grandstands. The memorial wall would not go away. We're just talking about the grandstands with those large concrete overhangs. We would like to replace those two grandstands with current day ones that meet today's seismic requirements. And then there was a question about field for Lincoln High School. You are correct. There is not a field for Lincoln High School. And that is what the funding is for within the levy, is to create a field for Lincoln High School. So don't know where that's going to be right now, but we would need to have money to go do that. And then there was a comment about the retro commissioners. I wasn't quite sure what the ask was, but this is continuation of a program that we have. If you're not familiar with retro commissioners, this is a team of people that go school to school, building to building, and they test our systems and make sure everything is working properly. So over time, things get out of balance, out of whack, and they will fine tune our ventilation systems, our lighting systems, primarily HVAC, to make sure everything is working the way it's supposed to work. And that keeps our buildings working in the best way. So I think that was the questions that were still outstanding. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Perhaps, I don't know if we have any more questions. We brought out quite a few comments, and I appreciate everybody's contribution. I'm just thinking maybe I should give one more chance for other questions, and then we can adjourn early. Anybody that would like to ask another question, or a speaker that has another comment? If not, I want to thank everyone for coming. Thanks very much to the speakers. Appreciate your time and the explanations you could give. Thanks to the audience for their questions, and I hope there'll be a much wider audience as it's broadcast out on the YouTube link. We have no idea of how many people are watching on in-house TV right now at Horizon House, so I hope a lot of people. Thanks to Risa for running this, Jenny for the slides, Adele for help with the questions, Sam for his help, and really enjoyed the afternoon with all of you. But the big thing is getting out there, getting your ballot, and deciding how you're going to vote. So I hope this has helped you to make a better choice when that ballot arrives. Thank you. And I think we'll say good afternoon.
Thank you, Laura, for leading us too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.